Tonight, we are going to explore some timeless Zen stories that have helped people find peace and relaxation for centuries. The room is quiet. Perhaps you notice the soft hum of a fan or the way night air moves gently across the curtains. A lamp glows nearby, steady and calm, like a small moon illuminating just enough for comfort. Each breath you take is a reminder that inner peace is never far away, and that even in stillness there is a quiet companionship. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you would like, you can share your location and the time where you are right now in the comments. It is always beautiful to know where others are listening from, together under the same vast sky. Now, let us ease into tonight's journey together. A great temple once stood on a hillside, its roof tiles gleaming under moonlight. At its center hung a massive bronze bell, suspended by thick beams, polished by time and weather, yet resting quietly in the night. It was said that this bell, when struck, carried its sound across valleys and rivers, reaching villages many miles away. But tonight, the bell was not struck. Tonight, it simply hung in its stillness, heavy, silent, waiting. And yet, for those who had the patience to sit beneath it, the silence itself seemed to ring in the heart. The teaching of impermanence is often heard in Zen circles, the reminder that all things change, that sound arises and then fades, like a wave breaking on a shore. The bell embodies this truth. Its sound, when called forth, blooms richly and then dissolves into silence. But the bell's silence is just as profound. It reminds us that compassion need not always take the form of words or action. Sometimes, compassion is the steady presence of something reliable, patient, and unmoving, like a friend simply sitting beside you without needing to speak. As night deepened, the garden around the bell held its breath. Leaves stirred faintly, the bamboo stalks whispered as if exchanging secrets, and the air carried the faint fragrance of pine. This is where the old monks would sit, listening not to the bell's ringing but to its silence, discovering that in its quiet form, the bell already contained the promise of sound. A Zen master might ask, does the bell sing even when it is never struck? And perhaps the student, puzzled, would feel the faint vibration within their own chest, like the body itself was the instrument waiting to resonate. Tonight, in your own room, you can sense something similar. Close your eyes gently and feel the way silence has a texture. It is not empty. It is full of subtle presence, of the tiny sounds of your breath, of the faint settling of the house around you, of your own heart softly working. Take 3 slow, mindful breaths now, and with each exhale, imagine you are releasing a bell tone into the night. The sound may not reach your ears, but it is there, spreading through your body, softening your shoulders, unclenching your jaw, allowing you to release the day. Zen often speaks of the bell of mindfulness. In some temples it is struck to invite people back to awareness, a gentle reminder to return to the present moment. But here, the bell is silent. The invitation is inward. The sound is felt not in the air but in the heart, an echo of compassion waiting to arise. The way out is in. You do not need an outer bell to awaken. You only need to notice the steady rhythm already within you. The novice monks once told a story during long winter nights. They imagined the bell's sound even when no one struck it. In the deep dark, they would close their eyes and hear the resonance rolling through the valley, soothing their loneliness. It was as though the bell whispered to them that, even in silence, they were not alone. You might imagine the same tonight, your own inner bell, resting, vast and still, offering a sense of belonging. In this way, the temple bell became a teacher. Its silence was not emptiness, but presence. Its waiting was not absence, but patience. And in its unmoving form, it reflected the truth that compassion is not always about doing, but about being a gentle availability, an openness to respond when the time comes, and until then, a still and quiet support. The moon passed slowly overhead, casting a pale light across the courtyard. The bell glistened faintly, bronze catching silver, and the night, like your own breath, unfolded with a rhythm of its own. The bell remained unmoved in the temple courtyard, yet the night carried with it a subtle vibration, as though the world itself longed to ring. A soft breeze threaded through the pines, gathering scents of earth and moss, and brushed lightly against the bell's cool surface. Though no mallet touched it, the air seemed to hum with its potential, like a note suspended between being and not being. The hillside, blanketed in silence, held that resonance, letting it drift into the valleys below where villages rested in their sleep. This is how impermanence reveals itself not only in the loud events of life, but in the quiet transitions between sound and silence, between motion and stillness. A bell struck too hard may fracture, but a bell left to rest holds endless possibilities. Its stillness carries an unspoken lesson. Compassion need not always announce itself with grandeur. Sometimes it whispers in the gentlest forms, like the way the night air cools the skin, or the way moonlight glides across rooftops without ever asking to be noticed. A Zen monk once said that listening is deeper than hearing. Hearing belongs to the ear, but listening belongs to the heart. As the breeze swirled around the bell, those who sat beneath it did not wait for a strike. Instead, they opened themselves to what was already there, the sound of crickets beyond the wall, the faint trickle of water from a hidden stream, and the unbroken silence stretching like a fabric over the night. Zen koan might ask, when the wind rings the bell, who is truly sounding the bell, the wind or your own awareness? The teaching of interbeing shines here. The bell cannot ring without the air, without the listener, without the valley to carry its voice. Likewise, compassion is never solitary. It arises in relationship, in connection, in the quiet meeting of hearts. You may feel this in your own life, the way your calm presence soothes another, even without a word. Tonight, in bed, notice the rhythm of your breath, and imagine it as wind passing gently over the bell of your body. Each inhalation lifts, each exhalation releases. The way out is in. For a simple micro-practice, rest one hand over your heart as you breathe. With each exhale, imagine a soft echo spreading from your chest like ripples on water. You need not force it. Just let the sensation radiate gently, as if your very presence were a bell that calms the space around you. Allow this ripple to soften your mind, then picture it traveling outward toward loved ones, neighbors, even those you will never meet, all resting under the same night sky. In the temple garden, a young novice once tried to strike the bell secretly at night, eager to hear its famous sound. But when he lifted the mallet, a breeze rushed through the courtyard and made the bronze hum just faintly. The boy froze. He realized the bell had already spoken without his effort. Smiling, he set down the mallet, sat cross-legged, and listened instead. In that moment, he learned that action is not always necessary. Sometimes waiting with awareness allows life to reveal its own music. The old master later told him, "Compassion is like that. Do not force it. Allow it to arise on its own, like the echo that follows the breeze." You too can sense this truth. As your body relaxes, notice how your breath naturally slows without your command. Your chest rises, your chest falls, your heartbeat continues steadily. Life moves on its own, and compassion too can flow naturally when you allow it space. Perhaps this is why the monks never rushed to strike the bell. They knew its silence was already teaching. The echo in the night was not a sound, but a presence, not a note, but a reminder. The bell, the wind, and the listener were part of one unbroken reality, like threads of a single tapestry. And as the night deepened, the temple grew even quieter, yet that quietness itself became music. The courtyard lay bathed in moonlight, and within it an elder monk moved slowly, his robes brushing the stone path like whispers across water. He paused near the silent bell, resting his weathered hands upon the wooden railing. His breath was long and steady, his eyes softened by years of practice. For him, the bell's silence was no emptiness at all. It was the most generous sound he had ever known. In his younger days, this elder had been troubled by the idea of compassion. He thought kindness meant constant action, speaking, giving, rescuing, doing. Yet life had shown him how quickly good intentions could become tangled in ego, how effort without wisdom sometimes added to suffering rather than easing it. Over the decades, he came to see that compassion often blooms most brightly in stillness, in simply being present, listening with the whole body, not rushing to solve. This is the middle way, the gentle teaching that lies between extremes, not neglecting, not overreaching, but resting in balance. Just as the bell waits patiently without forcing its sound, so too can compassion wait, emerging naturally when conditions ripen. He remembered a night long ago when he sat by the bell in solitude. The valley was hushed, and he felt loneliness pressing on him like a heavy stone. He asked himself, "Who will comfort me?" Then he closed his eyes, and instead of hearing silence, he sensed a warmth rising inside, as though the bell itself had answered. He realized compassion was not something to chase. It was already present within, waiting to be noticed. A Zen master might ask here, is compassion something we give, or is it something we uncover? The elder's reflection grew softer as he listened to the night sounds. The crackle of distant firewood in the village, the occasional bark of a dog carried by the wind, and the steady rhythm of his own breath. These were the echoes that reminded him he was never truly alone. Tonight, you might rest the same way. Let your breath flow naturally, neither shallow nor deep, just as it is. On the next exhale, imagine placing a soft smile on your face, even if faint. The muscles of your cheeks and jaw relax, and with that gentle smile, feel the loneliness or tension ease slightly. This is your small practice. Smile to the silence, and let the silence smile back. The elder monk often told the novices compassion is not only in helping others, it is also in how you treat your own weary heart. In modern life, this could mean pausing in the middle of a restless day, turning off a glowing screen, and simply breathing for 3 cycles. It could mean choosing to lie quietly without checking one more notification, letting the silence of your own inner bell soothe you. One quirky practice he shared with students was wall gazing. He would sit facing a blank wall for hours, not in boredom, but in companionship with stillness. To others it seemed strange, but to him the wall became a mirror where compassion reflected back endlessly. As you lie here tonight, your closed eyelids can be that wall. Behind them, instead of clutter, you might find the same quiet compassion returning your gaze. The elder's steps carried him slowly around the courtyard, his mind neither clinging to thoughts nor pushing them away. He understood that compassion was not about chasing perfection, but about meeting each moment tenderly, even the imperfect ones. The bell's silent form reminded him that sometimes the most healing thing one can offer is presence itself. Above, the moon shifted slightly westward, casting shadows longer across the stones. The bell remained unmoved, and yet the elder knew it was teaching, as it always had. The bell stood unmoving, yet its presence carried a mystery that stirred the imagination of every novice who sat nearby. They would whisper among themselves about the old koan. What is the sound of a bell that is never struck? Some laughed nervously, some shook their heads, and others lingered in silence, knowing there was no quick answer. One night, as the wind brushed past the bronze surface, the question echoed more strongly than ever. A novice sat cross-legged beneath the bell, his eyes wide with wonder. He had heard the master pose the koan earlier that day and could not release it from his thoughts. He pressed his palms together and asked silently, "Does the bell sing when no one listens, or does it need my ears to exist at all?" Zen thrives on such questions. Unlike ordinary riddles, koans are not meant to be solved with logic. They are doors, leading not outward but inward. The bell's silence became that doorway for the young monk. He closed his eyes and listened not to sound, but to the possibility of sound, the space before a note begins. And in that stillness, he noticed the pulse of his own heartbeat echoing softly in his chest. Was this not also a bell, ringing within him, without mallet or hand? The teaching of emptiness arises here, though not as a void to fear. Emptiness in Buddhism means that nothing stands alone. Everything is interwoven. The bell's song is not separate from the air, nor from the ear, nor from the one who imagines it. Just as your breath tonight is not separate from the air you draw in, or the warmth of the room holding you. The Zen master might gently ask, is it the bell that waits to be heard, or the listener who waits to awaken? For your own micro-practice now, take 3 mindful breaths. With each inhale, feel your chest rise as if filling a bell. With each exhale, imagine the sound that might emerge, even though no note is actually heard. This imagined resonance soothes your body, loosening tension in your shoulders, softening the space behind your eyes. You discover that silence itself carries a music of its own. The novices sometimes joked that the bell was lazy, refusing to do its work unless struck, but the elder monks smiled knowingly. They understood the unstruck bell was the greatest teacher, revealing that true resonance is beyond the ear. A story was told of a traveler who once demanded to hear the famous bell of the temple. When the monks said it would not be struck that night, he scoffed and prepared to leave. But as he stepped into the valley, he heard the river below, the cicadas, the faint rustle of bamboo, and suddenly he understood. The world itself had become the bell. You may notice something similar now. Perhaps there is a faint hum in your room, the refrigerator in the distance, with a low murmur of traffic beyond your window. Listen as though each sound were a note from the unstruck bell, calling you back to presence. Every sound becomes part of one continuous echo, and within that echo, your breath joins the symphony. The novice who once puzzled over the koan eventually stopped seeking an answer. He began instead to bow each night before the bell, whether or not it was struck. In his bow, he honored the silence as much as the sound. Over time, his restlessness softened, and he carried the bell's teaching into his own heart to ring without noise, to shine without flame, to offer compassion without fanfare. Above the courtyard, the stars shimmered, countless and silent, yet each one a bell of light. The night air was filled with echoes, though no hand had moved, no mallet had struck. The moon had climbed higher, casting a silver wash across the rooftops of the temple. Its light touched the bell's curved surface, gliding gently like water across bronze. From the valley below, the darkened houses appeared softened, their lines blurred by moonbeams, as if the whole world were painted in quiet strokes of light. The old monks often compared compassion to moonlight. It does not choose where to shine. It falls equally on the palace and the hut, the river and the stone. Moonlight does not demand gratitude, nor does it claim ownership. It simply offers its radiance freely, reflecting the sun's hidden warmth into the coolness of night. So too compassion flows when the heart is clear, offering care without expectation. A novice once sat by the bell during such a moonlit night. He noticed how the light did not stop at boundaries. Even the cracked tile on the temple roof glistened as though it were precious. Watching this, he thought perhaps compassion is not about fixing others, but about illuminating them, seeing their wholeness even when cracks appear. The Zen master might lean closer and ask, "Is it the moon that shines, or is it your eyes that awaken to its light?" This reflects the teaching of non-discrimination. Just as the moonlight does not divide the beautiful from the plain, compassion sees all beings as worthy. In daily life, this means offering the same gentleness to a stranger as to a friend, or to your own tired heart as you would to someone you love. Tonight, you can practice in a small way. As you rest, imagine moonlight filling your room. With each exhale, picture it brushing over your body like cool silk, soothing every part of you. Begin at your feet, letting them glow with rest. Then allow that glow to rise slowly up your legs, your torso, your arms, until your whole being feels bathed in quiet silver. This is your micro-practice, to let compassion fall upon yourself like moonlight, without effort, without condition. In a nearby village, there was once a widow who often sat by her window, lonely in the dark. The monks said she would listen for the bell, hoping its deep tones would comfort her. Yet on the nights when no sound came, she noticed instead the moonlight spilling across her floor. She came to call it her silent bell. Each time the light touched her room, she felt a reminder that kindness was never absent, even when unspoken. Over time, her grief softened, not by words, but by the steady rhythm of that silver glow. Compassion, the master explained, is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is as gentle as noticing the tired eyes of a friend and allowing silence instead of advice. Sometimes it is letting yourself rest without guilt. And sometimes it is simply shining steadily like the moon, asking nothing in return. As the night deepened, the novices looked out across the valley. Every roof tile shimmered, every blade of grass caught a glint. The world appeared woven together by light, each part touched equally, and within their hearts they felt the echo of the bell that had not rung. Compassion spread across the land, quiet and unconditional, like the moon above. The courtyard lay empty now, its stones washed in pale moonlight. Shadows of bamboo swayed gently across the ground, long lines bending as the night breeze shifted. At the center, the bell stood silent, and around it stretched a stillness so deep it felt alive. Not even the novices remained. They had retired to their wooden chambers. Only the echo of footsteps lingered, faint in memory, as though the stones themselves remembered the rhythm of walking. This empty courtyard revealed another truth, that solitude, when welcomed, is not loneliness, but a doorway into interbeing. In Buddhism, interbeing teaches that nothing exists alone. Every presence touches every other. The bell depends on the air on the wind on the trees. Even in the courtyard's emptiness, one could sense the fullness of connection. An old Zen master once said, "To hear the bell, you must hear the silence that holds it." He would sit for hours in the courtyard, eyes half closed, as if listening to conversations no one else could hear. Novices often asked what he was listening to. He only smiled and said, "To the space between." The Zen koan might arise here. Is the courtyard empty, or is it filled with everything that allows emptiness to be? Your own room, right now, may feel quiet. Perhaps the only sound is your breath, or a faint hum in the distance. Allow yourself to notice that this quiet does not mean absence. It holds every sound that could be, every presence waiting to be felt. For a small practice, try counting your exhales up to 10. 1. Soft release. 2. A deeper letting go. By the time you reach 10, notice how the silence feels fuller, not emptier. The way out is in. A story was told of a novice who disliked the emptiness of the courtyard. He preferred noise, chatter, the comfort of companions. But one winter evening, snow began to fall, covering the courtyard in white silence. He stepped outside reluctantly, only to find that the snowflakes themselves seemed to whisper, the air sparkling with life. Standing there, he realized that emptiness was not void, it was vastness. He later said, "The courtyard taught me more than the classroom ever did." In modern life, people often fill their courtyards, their inner spaces, with constant messages, glowing screens, endless scrolls of information. Yet the empty courtyard of the temple shows another way, silence as teacher, stillness as fullness. You might picture your own inner courtyard tonight, swept clean of noise, open under the moon, a space where you can rest without demand. The bell, though silent, became the centerpiece of that spaciousness. Its still form reminded all who saw it that presence itself can be a gift. Even when alone, they were not separate. The echo of compassion lived in the very air. And so the empty courtyard was not empty at all. It was alive with the breath of the night, the shifting of shadows, and the unstruck song of the bell. The next evening, when the novices gathered near the bell, the young student found the courage to speak. His voice was soft, almost hesitant, as if afraid to disturb the stillness that wrapped around them. "Master," he asked, "does compassion always need words, or can silence itself be enough?" The old monk did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze to the bell, its bronze surface glowing faintly in the lamplight. The night air was cool, filled only with the sound of cicadas beyond the wall. Finally he spoke. "When the bell is struck, its voice carries far. But when it is silent, its presence is still felt. Which one, do you think, holds greater compassion?" The novices murmured, uncertain. Some thought the ringing was more powerful, others felt the silence was gentler. The young student lowered his head, unsure if his question had been answered. But in Zen, answers are not always given directly. They arise from within, like an echo forming in the heart. This moment reflected the teaching of right speech not merely about speaking truthfully, but about knowing when silence carries more kindness than words. Just as the moon shines without a sound, compassion can shine in quiet presence, in the simple act of being near another without judgment or demand. The quirky element of Zen often reveals itself in such exchanges. Sometimes a master would respond to a question not with explanation, but with a clap of hands, or a long silence, or a sudden laugh. These gestures, though puzzling, open the mind to new ways of seeing. A Zen master might ask here, when comfort arises without words, who is the true speaker, the one beside you, or the stillness itself? Tonight, you can try this in your own bed. Place your hand gently on your chest. Feel the rise and fall of your breathing. Instead of searching for words of reassurance, let the touch itself be the message. Say nothing, but sense the quiet comfort that is already present. This is your micro-practice, to offer compassion without speech, letting presence be enough. There was once a story of two monks who visited a grieving farmer. One spoke many kind words, offering teachings and advice. The other sat quietly, only holding the farmer's hand. Later, the farmer said, "The words were helpful, but it was the silence that healed me." Compassion wears many forms, and often it is the silent ones that linger longest. The young novice pondered this as he lay in his chamber that night. He recalled how his master's silence had carried more weight than any sermon. He realized compassion could be like the bell, sometimes striking loudly to awaken, sometimes resting quietly to soothe. Both are needed, but neither can be forced. Outside, the night deepened. The bell remained unstruck, yet its presence filled the courtyard. And in the novice's heart, a quiet answer had begun to form. The night stretched deeper, stars scattering like lanterns across the sky. In the quiet chambers of the temple, many novices drifted into dreams, yet one remained awake, lying on his mat, listening to the faint movements of the wind. He closed his eyes and found himself imagining the bell's resonance not with his ears, but with his heart. It began as a subtle vibration within his chest, a thrum that seemed to sync with his breath. Each inhale filled him like a bell being readied, and each exhale released a soundless note, carrying through his whole body. The novice realized he did not need to strike the great bell to hear it. Its echo was alive inside him already. This is the teaching of mindfulness, to recognize that awareness itself contains every sound, every silence, every breath. When we listen deeply, we discover that the echoes we seek in the outer world are already present within. The echo in the heart is timeless, needing no mallet, no ear, only attention. A Zen master might pose the question, when the heart rings with compassion, who hears the sound, you, the world, or both together? The paradox is gentle, meant not to confuse, but to soften boundaries. In truth, the heart's echo is not separate from the world. It is the world, resounding in every breath you take. For your own micro-practice tonight, bring attention to your heartbeat. Place your hand lightly on your chest, or simply sense its rhythm. As you feel its steady pulse, imagine each beat sending out a soft echo, like a bell's note traveling across valleys. Let that echo carry warmth, kindness, and ease. Picture it reaching someone who might need comfort, even if you do not know who. Allow yourself to rest in the sense that compassion moves effortlessly with every pulse of your being. A story was told of a monk who meditated beside the bell for many years. One day, a visitor asked if he heard the bell often. The monk smiled faintly and said, "It rings without ceasing, but not in the air. Its sound is here," and he tapped his chest. The visitor laughed at first, then grew quiet. Later, walking down the valley path, he noticed his own heart beating, and felt as though he too carried the temple's great bell within him. This is the quirky beauty of Zen. The ordinary heartbeat becomes the Dharma teacher, the body itself, a temple, the pulse, a bell echoing across the universe. Even in modern life, when stress or worry races through the chest, you can pause, place a hand over your heart, and listen. The echo is still there, waiting. As the novice lay listening to his inner bell, the night around him deepened into stillness. The cicadas quieted, the wind softened, and yet the resonance in his chest continued, steady and calm. He smiled faintly in the dark, realizing he would never be far from compassion again. The temple bell stood silent, but the echo of compassion was already alive, in him, in you, in the world. Rain arrived quietly, first as a whisper on the temple roof, then as a soft patter across the courtyard stones. Droplets clung to the bronze bell, tracing delicate lines down its curved body. The air cooled, carrying with it the earthy fragrance of wet pine and moss. The novices stirred in their chambers, some drifting back to sleep to the lullaby of rain, others lying awake, listening as if the sky itself had begun to chant. The sound of rain is a perfect teacher of impermanence. Each drop falls, strikes, and vanishes, leaving behind only a widening ripple or a fleeting shimmer. None clings to its form. Each accepts its moment fully before dissolving. The monks often reflected that human thoughts and feelings are no different. Worries arrive, press upon the heart, and eventually pass away, if only we allow them. Compassion, too, is like rain, sometimes abundant, sometimes scarce, yet always returning in cycles. An old Zen saying tells us, "Listen to the rain until it washes your mind clear." To sit beneath the roof of the temple, as rain fell, was to experience this teaching directly. The steady rhythm blurred the line between sound and silence, creating a spaciousness where the mind could rest. A master might gently ask, "Is it the rain that falls, or the sky that releases?" Tonight, you can let the rain be your guide, whether or not it falls outside your window. As you lie in bed, imagine droplets sliding from the crown of your head down toward your feet. With each exhale, picture those droplets carrying away tension, worries, and lingering restlessness. By the time the stream reaches your toes, you are lighter, calmer, washed, clean. This is your micro-practice to let go drop by drop, softening with each release. A tale is told of a monk who once grew frustrated with the endless rain of a monsoon season. He longed for clear skies and dry robes, but one night, sitting near the bell, he noticed how the rain softened every sound, even his own heartbeat. Suddenly, the endless drizzle no longer seemed oppressive but compassionate, a constant reminder that nothing is permanent, not even discontent. He later taught that welcoming the rain of life allows the soil of the heart to grow fertile. In modern times, rain can mirror the digital clutter that pours through our lives, messages, notifications, endless streams of noise. Yet just as rain nourishes the earth, Even these moments can become teachers if we meet them with awareness. Imagine each raindrop of thought landing softly, then dissolving on its own. You do not need to chase them or stop them. Simply let them fall. The bell gleamed wet in the courtyard, silent but glistening. Around it the rain song continued without pause. The monks rested more deeply that night, soothed by the reminder that life flows best when we release the need to hold it still. Rain arrived quietly over the temple grounds, as though the heavens had taken a long, slow breath and exhaled into the valley. At first, it was only a faint rustle upon the bamboo leaves, delicate and almost secretive. Then came the soft percussion of droplets on stone, roof, and bell, each surface answering in its own voice. The bronze bell shimmered, as beads of water formed on its surface, tracing slow silver lines downward. In the cool air, every sound seemed magnified, as if the night itself had become a vast resonant chamber. The novices stirred in their chambers, some shifting beneath woolen blankets, others lying awake to listen. For them, the rain was a lullaby, a rhythm both steady and unpredictable, always changing, yet somehow constant. It was in moments like these that the old monks encouraged listening with the whole body. Do not hear the rain only with your ears, they said, but let it fall upon your skin, your breath, even your heart. The teaching of impermanence was clear in every drop. None lasted long. Each appeared, fell, and disappeared into the earth. The bell, too, carried this lesson. Struck or unstruck, wet or dry, its nature was to reveal change without clinging to it. A Zen master might pose the question, when a raindrop lands and vanishes, where does it go? The student who sits in silence may realize that the answer is not in the mind, but in the direct experience of the moment, the sound dissolving, the trace fading, the heart softening. A young novice once complained during a long rainy season, saying he was weary of damp robes and muddy paths. An elder listened without scolding, then simply guided him to sit beneath the bell one stormy night. The boy resisted at first, but then something shifted. The downpour filled the valley with a deep, resonant hush, and he noticed how the rain softened even the harsh edges of his thoughts. Later, he admitted, the rain washed more than my robes. It washed my impatience. From then on, he came to see each drop as a teacher. For your own micro-practice tonight, you can let the rain, real or imagined, soothe you in bed. Picture droplets beginning at the crown of your head, slowly traveling downward with each exhale. As they move, they gather the weight of your day, tensions, worries, lingering thoughts, and carry them away. Imagine the stream flowing down through your shoulders, your chest, your arms, then through your legs, until it gently pools at your feet and dissolves into the earth. By the time you finish, your body feels lighter, as if cleansed by a silent shower of compassion. The quirky side of Zen often comes alive in weather. Some monks delighted in walking slowly through rain without umbrellas, smiling as the drops soaked their robes. To others it seemed absurd, but the monks said, "The rain falls only on the surface." Inside, we remain untouched. Their laughter mingled with the rain, showing that joy can bloom even in what others call inconvenience. A reflective question arises here. When you resist the rain, do you suffer from wetness or from your own refusal to be wet? In daily life, many of our struggles are like this, born not from the event itself, but from the way we brace against it. Rain teaches surrender. Each drop arrives and passes away without complaint. The bell glistened under the falling water, never struck, yet full of song. The droplets tapped its surface, producing tiny notes, almost too faint to hear. Together, they created a hidden music, reminding those awake that the world is always ringing if we only listen deeply enough. Beyond the temple walls, villagers curled beneath their blankets. Some heard the storm as a disturbance. Others felt it as a gift. In truth, the rain was both, and neither it was simply rain, and the meaning came from how it was received. So it is with compassion. Sometimes it is loud and clear, sometimes subtle and quiet, but always present, waiting to be noticed. By midnight, the storm settled into a steady rhythm. Water streamed from the tiled eaves, pooling in the courtyard, reflecting the moon when it broke through clouds. The monks, whether asleep or awake, were wrapped in its cadence, as if the entire monastery had become one vast body breathing with the rain. In this way the bell and the rain spoke together, one silent, one restless, yet both teaching the same truth: let go, allow, soften. And for those who listened, a gentle peace entered, drop by drop, until the night was full of compassion. At the edge of the temple grounds stood an old wooden gate. On most nights it remained still, its hinges creaking only when a traveler passed through. But in the folklore of the monastery, this gate was said to attract unseen visitors on nights of heavy rain or restless wind. The monks told stories of hungry ghosts lingering nearby, drawn not by food but by the resonance of the great bell. Hungry ghosts, in Buddhist teaching, symbolize insatiable craving beings with tiny throats and swollen bellies who cannot be satisfied, no matter how much they consume. They are not only mythical, they are mirrors for our own unending desires, our restless scrolling, our endless, just one more thoughts. The temple gate, with its worn beams and patient silence, became the stage for these parables, reminding all who entered that craving is itself a form of suffering. One evening, a novice sat by the gate during a sleepless night. He imagined the hungry ghosts gathered beyond, pacing, yearning, their mouths open in longing. At first he felt fear, but then, remembering the Master's words, he bowed toward the darkness and whispered, "May you be at ease." Strangely, the night air seemed to soften. He realized that his compassion had fed them more than rice ever could. The Master later explained, hungry ghosts do not disappear by being ignored or feared. They transform when met with compassion. A Zen koan might arise when a ghost hungers. Who is truly empty, the ghost, or the heart that fears it? For your own practice tonight, you may notice your own hungry ghosts. Perhaps they are unfinished thoughts, cravings for one more glance at your phone, or old regrets circling the mind. Instead of pushing them away, try placing a hand on your heart and silently saying, "Hello, dear ghost. I see you. May you rest." 3 mindful breaths with this gentle greeting can soften even the most restless craving. A story is told of a forest monk who once carried a bowl of rice to the temple gate. When asked why, he said, "I am feeding my ghosts." The novices laughed, thinking he was joking. But later they realized he meant his own restless desires, his impatience, his pride. Offering rice was his way of acknowledging them kindly rather than fighting them. Over time, those ghosts grew weaker, and his heart grew lighter. In modern life, hungry ghosts can appear as the constant hunger for approval, the endless appetite for new distractions, the craving to always be busy. Yet, like the bell waiting in silence, compassion teaches us that we are enough, right here, right now. The way out is in... That night, the rain slowed, and the gate stood quietly. No figures appeared, no shadows crossed the path, but in the novice's heart, something shifted. By bowing toward his imagined ghosts, he discovered that fear itself had softened into understanding. The gate, the rain, the bell, all were part of the same lesson. Compassion is not only for the living, but also for the restless parts of ourselves. And so the courtyard returned to stillness. The hungry ghosts faded into mist, leaving behind the echo of a simple truth, that kindness can reach even what seems untouchable. Morning had not yet come, but the night air had softened. The heavy rains of the previous evening had given way to a damp, fragrant stillness. The bell glistened faintly in the moonlight, beads of water sliding down its curved sides, dripping onto the stone base below. Each drop joined the puddles that had formed in the courtyard, and from those pools, rivulets streamed toward the slope of the hill. The sound of water moving away was like a whispered song, almost as though the bell itself had found a new voice through the flow. This river song became a lesson to all who listened. Sound is not bound to one form. A bell may sing through bronze, but it can also sing through rainwater, through leaves, through the listening heart. The river carried not only droplets, but also echoes, teaching release without struggle. In Buddhist thought, this is the truth of non-attachment. Just as the water does not resist the slope, compassion flows most freely when it is not forced. The monks often reflected by the riverside, comparing the current to the movement of thoughts. Each thought, like a drop of rain, arises and dissolves, joining the stream of mind. To cling to one drop would be impossible. To cling to one thought only causes weariness. The river shows us how to let go. A Zen master might ask, if the river holds no water twice, what do you hold when you cling to thought? A tale is told of a traveling monk who carried a small bell in his pack. When he grew weary, he would sit by a river and strike the bell once. As its tone faded, he listened to the water take over the song. This, he said, is compassion teaching itself. The bell begins, the river continues, and I rest in between. His companions learned from him that compassion is not a task of endurance. It is a shared current, passed from one form to another. Tonight, as you lie still, you may try a simple practice of flowing with your own breath. Imagine each exhale as water, leaving a jar, pouring gently into the river below. Count 3 exhales this way, letting them carry your day's weight downstream. Then pause for a heartbeat of silence before the next inhale, as if the jar is being refilled by the fresh air of dawn. Continue until your body feels lighter, as though you are carried gently by the current. The quirky spirit of Zen sometimes took form in unexpected ways. One monk, noticing the river's constant motion, once threw a stick into the current and declared, "There goes my anger." When asked later if it worked, he laughed. Not yet, it caught on a rock. His companions chuckled, yet they understood his teaching. Even when we release, we must be patient for the current to carry it fully away. Just as a river clears slowly, the heart also needs time. The bell and the river together reminded the monks of interdependence. One without the other seemed incomplete. The bell gave voice to stillness. The river gave voice to movement. Compassion, too, must live in both. At times we sit quietly, holding silence for another. At times we move like water, carrying kindness through action. The middle way lies not in choosing one, but in flowing between them. The novice who once feared the hungry ghosts now found himself listening to the river with ease. He realized his own restlessness was not a curse, but a current. If he resisted, the water swelled against him. If he surrendered, it carried him gently. That night he whispered to himself, "My thoughts are rivers. My heart is the valley. Compassion is the sea where all waters meet." In modern life, rivers can be imagined in many forms. The stream of messages, the flow of conversations, the flood of news, all seem endless. Yet, just as the monks stood by the river without trying to catch every drop, you too can allow the flow to move without grasping. Choose only to notice, then let it pass. Each notification, each worry, each fleeting idea can be like a raindrop, sliding off the bell, brief, present, gone. The moon lowered in the sky, and the river below shimmered as it carried the rain toward distant fields. Farmers would wake to nourished soil. Children would rise to the scent of wet earth. All of this had begun with clouds, with rain, with the bell shimmering quietly as the current sang. Compassion does not stop at the temple walls. It moves outward, just like the water, touching lives unseen. The bell stood silently, its surface cooled by the night air, while below, the river carried the teachings downstream. Together they formed a single parable, whispered through bronze and water alike. Let go, and let compassion flow. Lanterns lined the stone path that led away from the temple courtyard and into the surrounding forest. Their small flames flickered in the damp night air, glowing against the darkness like guiding stars. Each lantern was spaced just far enough apart that the next light only appeared after a few steps into the shadow. To walk the path at night was to alternate between darkness and light, between uncertainty and reassurance, until eventually one discovered that both were part of the same journey. The monks often called this the lantern path, and they spoke of it as a living metaphor for mindfulness. Each step, whether taken in light or in shadow, was to be walked with awareness. The bell, silent in the courtyard, could still be felt here. Its presence echoed not in sound, but in the quiet discipline of walking. A Zen master once asked his students, "Is it the lantern that lights the path, or the foot that discovers it?" The question lingered with them, as questions often do in Zen, not seeking an answer but an opening. The teaching of mindfulness in walking meditation was simple but profound. Lift the foot, place the foot, breathe. There was no destination more important than the step itself. In this practice, even the shadows between lanterns became teachers, inviting trust in the path. For the novices, who often hurried with youthful impatience, the lantern path was both challenge and gift. To walk slowly in the cool night air, with only faint glows ahead, required letting go of the desire to rush forward. One novice once stumbled in the darkness between two lanterns. Embarrassed, he muttered about the poor lighting. The elder beside him smiled and said, "It was not the path that failed you, but your hurry to see the next lamp." From that night onward, the boy practiced pausing in the darkness, feeling the ground with his toes, listening to the breath in his chest before moving forward. In time, he came to treasure the dark spaces more than the lit ones. Tonight, you can imagine yourself walking that same lantern path. Close your eyes and picture a soft flame, glowing just a few steps ahead. As you breathe in, imagine lifting one foot gently. As you breathe out, imagine placing it down. Even lying still in bed, you can travel this way. After 10 slow steps of breath, notice how your mind has quieted, as though each lantern you passed left behind a calm glow inside you. This is your micro-practice, walking without moving, carrying lanterns of mindfulness through the dark of your own thoughts. In Zen history, lanterns often symbolized wisdom passed from one teacher to another. When Master Huineng received the robe and bowl that marked him as the sixth patriarch, it was said the transmission was like a flame carried into a new lantern, unbroken, unextinguished. Each of us, too, carries such a flame of awareness, and each step along the path is a chance to let it shine. The quirky humor of Zen sometimes appeared on this path as well. One rainy night, a monk placed his lantern upside down so that its light fell only on the ground beneath his feet. When asked why, he replied, "The sky already shines its lanterns as stars. My feet deserve one too." His companions laughed, but they also understood the playfulness of mindfulness. Wisdom can illuminate even the smallest details, like the texture of stone underfoot. A reflective question might arise as you walk this imagined path. If you trust only the lantern's glow, what happens when the flame goes out? The monks taught that mindfulness is not about clinging to the light, but about learning to walk steadily, even in shadow. In truth, the darkness between lanterns holds its own lessons. It teaches patience, trust, and the ability to rest in not knowing. For those living in the modern world, the lantern path can mirror the experience of moving through uncertainty, jobs, relationships, health, or the restless shifts of the digital age. Rarely do we see the whole road ahead. We are shown only a few steps at a time, the next email, the next day, the next decision. And yet, like the monks on the path, we can learn to trust the process, breathe, step, breathe again. The night air thickened with mist as the lanterns glowed faintly against the trees. The forest whispered with hidden life owls calling, leaves dripping from earlier rain, the occasional snap of a twig beneath deer hooves. Each sound became part of the practice, reminding the monks that walking meditation is not about silence alone, but about hearing everything as it is. Even the distant echo of the river became a lantern, lighting the mind with its presence. By the time the novices reached the final lantern, where the path curved back toward the temple, their steps were slower, their breath calmer. They no longer hurried, for the path itself had become their home. The bell, silent in the courtyard, seemed to hum within them as they returned, carrying its unseen echo with every footfall. And so, the lantern path remained not just a way through the forest, but a teaching etched into stone, shadow, and flame. It reminded all who walked it that mindfulness is not about racing toward light, but about moving steadily, one step at a time, through both brightness and darkness, until every step becomes a lantern of its own. The night deepened until the lanterns flickered low, and most of the novices had returned to their chambers. Only one figure remained in the courtyard, the compassionate master, seated quietly on a wooden bench beneath the shadow of the bell. His posture was relaxed, yet his presence filled the space as naturally as moonlight fills the valley. His students often said that when he sat in stillness, the whole temple seemed to breathe more easily. He was known not only for his wisdom, but also for his gentleness in dealing with strong emotions. Where other teachers might scold a novice for anger or impatience, this master would smile with eyes that softened even the sharpest temper. His teaching was simple, meet anger with tenderness, as if cradling a crying child. Compassion, he once said, is not turning away from fire, but embracing it with cool hands until it burns no more. This reflected the Buddha's teaching on the transformation of emotions. In the same way that a lotus grows from mud, clarity often arises from the heart's darker waters. The Master embodied this truth. When anger came to him in himself or in others, he did not suppress it, nor did he allow it to flare into harm. Instead, he held it like the bell holds silence, steady, patient, unafraid. A Zen koan might ask, when fire rests in cool hands, who is burned? One evening, a novice, weary from harsh words exchanged earlier in the day, approached the Master with shame. "I tried to let go of my anger," the novice confessed, "but it grew larger the more I resisted." The Master nodded and pointed to the bell. "Do you hear it ringing now?" The novice shook his head. "Exactly," said the Master. "The bell does not fight its silence. It rests. When the right moment comes, it will sound. Treat your anger the same way. Rest with it. Breathe with it. In time, it will reveal its echo of clarity." The Master's approach might seem unusual, even quirky. Sometimes he would ask an angry novice to sit and pour tea with full attention. "Do not speak," he would say. "Let the steam carry your heat away." Other times, he would take them to the garden and ask them to water the plants until their breath slowed. These simple tasks, infused with mindfulness, often dissolved tension better than lectures ever could. Tonight, you can try such a practice for yourself. If a restless emotion stirs within, place your palms together gently, as if holding something fragile. Breathe in slowly, counting to 3. On the exhale, imagine your palms cooling a small flame inside your chest. Repeat this for 3 breaths. Notice how the simple act of acknowledgement, without pushing away, softens the feeling. This is your micro-practice to embrace the flame without fear, allowing compassion to cool it naturally. Stories of the compassionate Master spread through the valley. Villagers said he once calmed a furious farmer not by arguing, but by silently offering a cup of warm broth. The farmer's anger melted in the steam rising between them. Another tale told how he comforted a grieving widow by walking beside her in silence for many nights, never offering advice, only presence. His compassion was like the moon, gentle, unwavering, and free of demand. The reflective question arises, is compassion something we give, or is it the way we see? The Master seemed to suggest the latter. By seeing anger not as an enemy but as a suffering child, one's response naturally shifted from judgment to care. By seeing sorrow not as weakness but as love enduring, one's heart opened wider. In modern life, the compassionate Master's teaching feels especially vital. Surrounded by digital noise, endless demands, and the quick spark of online tempers, it is easy to react with sharpness. Yet, like the Master, we can pause, breathe, and choose tenderness. Even sending a single kind message, or choosing silence instead of argument, can be an act of compassion as powerful as ringing the temple bell. The bell above the Master remained unstruck, yet its silent form mirrored his teaching. Both embodied patience, both offered presence without demand. The novices, peeking from their windows, felt comfort simply seeing their teacher seated in the moonlight, calm and steady. They whispered to each other that his silence carried more weight than words, and that his compassion seemed to echo through the temple like an unseen sound. The night grew cooler, and the stars sharpened above the valley. Still the master sat, his robes brushing the bench, his breath steady as a tide. The novices fell asleep one by one, but they carried his image into their dreams, a compassionate figure, steady as the bell, softening anger into clarity, sorrow into tenderness, fire into light. The night edged toward its quietest hours, that soft threshold when even the crickets seemed to rest between their songs. The temple bell, glistening faintly from the earlier rain, stood untouched in the courtyard. No mallet approached, no hand reached out to strike. And yet, for those who had been listening with the heart, its silence was already music. The monks spoke of it as the unstruck chime, a presence that resonated without a single sound. The teaching of emptiness, or sunyata, arose here in gentle form. Emptiness did not mean nothingness, but fullness without boundary, like the sky holding every star. The unstruck chime embodied this truth. Its silence was not the absence of sound, but the presence of all potential tones, waiting, infinite. A Zen master might pose the question, when a chime is never struck, does it sing in silence, or does silence sing through it? The answer was not to be reasoned out, but to be felt in the marrow of stillness. A novice once confessed to the master that he feared silence. "When there is no sound, my thoughts become loud," he said. The master simply guided him to sit beneath the bell one midnight. They sat together for a long time, saying nothing. At first the novice fidgeted, uneasy, with the weight of his own restless mind. But then he began to notice the rhythm of his breath, the faint brush of wind across his cheek, the pulsing of his heart. He realized the silence was not empty. After all, it was alive with countless subtle notes. Later he whispered, "The unstruck bell was louder than any I have heard." For your practice tonight, you can taste the same teaching. Lie still and bring attention to the space between your breaths. Inhale, then pause before exhaling. Exhale, then pause before inhaling again. Notice how these pauses, often overlooked, are like unstruck chimes, silent, yet full of life. After a few cycles, feel how these silent moments cradle you, holding you softly. This is your micro-practice, listening to the music that arises from stillness itself. The quirky side of Zen often reveled in such paradoxes. One story told of a monk who sat for hours, listening intently. When asked what he heard, he replied, "The bell rang yesterday, and I am still listening." Another laughed and said, "I heard it tomorrow." To outsiders, their words seemed absurd, but within the monastery, such exchanges reminded everyone that sound and silence are not bound by time. They linger, overlap, and echo endlessly in awareness. The unstruck chime also became a metaphor for the lamp within. Just as a lantern glows even when hidden from view, the heart carries a quiet flame of compassion that requires no action to be real. You need not strike or prove it. Its mere presence is enough. This was the Master's deepest teaching. Be a lamp unto yourself, even when no one sees the light. One evening, a villager sought advice from the Master. "I want to be kind," she said, "but I do not know how. I have no great wisdom, no wealth to share." The Master led her to the bell and placed her hand upon its cool surface. "Feel this," he said. "The bell has not spoken tonight, yet has it not comforted you by its presence?" The woman wept softly, realizing that her simple being with patience, warmth, and quiet was itself a gift to others. She needed no striking gesture, no grand act. Her compassion already rang silently in the world. In the modern world, silence often feels threatening. People fill every gap with screens, voices, or music, fearing the weight of stillness. Yet the unstruck chime teaches the opposite, that silence is not void but nourishment. Within it, you rediscover the rhythm of your breath, the steadiness of your body, the quiet flame at the center of your being. Even as notifications blink and voices compete, there is always an inner bell waiting in silence, reminding you come home to yourself. The reflective question lingers. If no one hears your kindness, does it still exist? The bell answers by its very presence. Compassion does not depend on applause, nor on being noticed. Like the unstruck chime, it resonates quietly, invisibly, yet powerfully. The courtyard grew colder as mist drifted from the valley, shrouding the stones and bamboo in silver haze. Yet within the mist, the bell stood tall, bronze glimmering faintly, silent and eternal. Those who walked past felt a calm settle over them, as if the silence itself reached out like a gentle hand. The unstruck chime needed no mallet. Its teaching was complete in its quietness. And so the monks learned to trust the unspoken, the unseen, the unstruck. They carried this lesson into their sleep, into their dreams, into their daily lives, letting compassion be present not only in words or deeds, but also in the silent echo of simply being. The hour before dawn wrapped the temple in its deepest stillness. Clouds thinned in the sky, and a pale band of silver stretched across the horizon. The courtyard stones glistened faintly from the night's rain, and the bronze bell stood motionless, its form softened by mist. No monk stirred, no lantern flickered. Yet in that profound quiet, the entire temple seemed to hum with unseen resonance, as though silence itself had become sound. This was what the monks called the echo of compassion, a resonance that continued long after the striking ceased, or, in this case, even when the bell had never been struck at all. The echo was not confined to ears. It moved through hearts, through gestures, through the way one being touched another without words. The teaching of compassion had threaded through every story, every silence, every drop of rain. Here it came together in its most essential form, compassion as presence, not as something to perform, but as something that simply radiates, like the moon's light falling on rooftops, or the river carrying water downstream. The Buddha himself once said that compassion is boundless, without preference, like the fragrance of a flower drifting wherever the wind takes it. A Zen master might pose one final question. When the bell's echo lingers, though no sound was ever made, where does it truly live? Some would answer in the heart, others in awareness, but the master might only smile, knowing that the echo is not a thing to be pinned down. It is felt, not explained. One final story was often told among the monks. A weary traveler arrived at the temple, burdened with grief from losing his family. He asked to hear the famous bell, believing its sound might soothe him. But the monks explained that the bell would not be struck that night. Disheartened, he prepared to leave. As he stepped into the misty courtyard, however, he noticed the silence pressing gently around him. He paused, listening. There was no tone, yet his heart softened, as if a note had been sung just for him. He turned back, bowed to the silent bell, and whispered, "It has rung." "For your practice tonight?" Let yourself rest in that same silence. Breathe in gently, and as you exhale, imagine sending compassion outward like ripples in a still pond. You do not need to know where it goes. You only need to trust that it travels. Try this for 3 slow breaths, then allow yourself to simply be held by the quiet echo within. This is the final micro-practice. No effort, no striving, only resting in the compassion that is already here. Zen often delights in paradox, and here the paradox is most tender. A bell that does not sound yet resonates endlessly. A compassion that requires no action, yet heals without limit. In this way, the bell becomes every listener's own heart, quietly singing whether or not the world notices. The monks would say, the way out is in. Come home to yourself. And in coming home, you discover the echo has always been waiting, gentle and unbroken. As dawn approached, the mist thinned, and the first birds began their tentative calls. The novices stirred, stretching, their dreams still carrying fragments of bells and lanterns, rivers and rain. The compassionate master opened his eyes, having sat all night in stillness, and smiled at the new day. The bell remained unstruck, yet the whole temple carried its echo, each being a vessel of compassion. In your own resting place, beneath your own roof, you too carry this echo with every breath, with every heartbeat, with every quiet thought of kindness. The bell resounds. You need not listen hard. Simply soften, and it is there. And so the story comes not to an end, but to a resting point. The echo of compassion continues, in silence, in presence, in you. As your breath slows now, imagine the courtyard fading into soft mist. The bell still visible but distant, its outline blurred like a dream. The lanterns along the path dim one by one, until only the faintest glow remains in memory. The rain has ceased, the river flows steadily, and the night sky gives way to the earliest hues of dawn. You may feel the weight of your body sinking deeper into rest, as though you are lying upon the earth itself, supported without effort. Each inhale arrives like a gentle tide, each exhale drifts away like a leaf carried on water. There is nothing to do, nowhere to go, only the endless rhythm of being here now. Allow yourself to release the day completely. Picture each thought as a droplet sliding from the surface of the bell, falling soundlessly into the pool below, dissolving, gone. What remains is a still presence, vast and tender, holding you the way moonlight holds the valley. Remember the silent bell. It never needed to ring to be real. Your own heart is like that compassion, already alive, already resonating without effort. Trust that echo as you drift into sleep, knowing it will carry you through dreams and into morning. So rest now with ease. Let the last of your breath tonight be a soft lantern guiding you inward, toward the echo of compassion that never fades. Peace is here, and it has always been.